Everything was quiet until it was. No warning, no build-up, just one moment where the internet flipped from normal scrolling to full-blown chaos in seconds. Because out of nowhere, footage tied to NBA YoungBoy hit timelines, and it didn't just spread, it detonated. Within minutes, everything changed. Group chats lit up. TikTok feeds refreshed faster than people could keep up. Twitter threads stacked on top of each other like a race. No one could win. And everywhere the same question echoed. Where did this come from and why now? Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Whatever this footage was, people believed it was gone, buried somewhere deep in the past, forgotten, lost in the noise of everything that came after. But late last night, that illusion shattered. Anonymous accounts, multiple, not just one, started posting clips. Not long videos, not full explanations, just fragments. Short, raw moments that looked like they came from a different time. A different version of him. And the internet didn't hesitate. Screenshots were everywhere within minutes. TikTok started breaking it down frame by frame. Threads began forming before anyone even confirmed what they were looking at. But then things got even stranger. Because while some people were reacting like this was brand new, others were saying the exact opposite. They claimed this footage had been online before. Not fully, not clearly, but in pieces. Hidden in old uploads. Buried in forgotten live streams. Sitting in places no one thought to check until now. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. Because if this wasn't new, then why was it blowing up now? That question changed everything. Some people said it was timing. They pointed out how YoungBoy had been trending again recently. New attention, new conversations, his name climbing back into major discussions. And in the entertainment world, timing like that rarely happens by accident. Others believed something deeper was happening. Something personal. Because whispers started spreading, quiet at first, but fast enough to catch momentum, that someone close to him might have had access to this footage. Someone who knew exactly what they had. And more importantly, exactly when to release it. And if that's true, then this isn't just a leak. It's strategy. Because leaks don't just appear out of nowhere. They're placed, timed, positioned for maximum impact. And this one hit exactly where it needed to. But while the internet was busy debating whether the footage was real, old, fake, or edited, another layer started forming underneath. People began digging. Not casually, obsessively. Old interviews resurfaced, clips where YoungBoy talked about trust, about betrayal, about people around him switching up when the moment was right. At the time, those interviews sounded like what every artist says. Stay loyal. Watch your circle. Don't trust too easily. But now those same words felt different. Now people were replaying them like warnings. He knew something like this would happen. This ain't his first time dealing with betrayal. He'd been saying this. And just like that, the story evolved again. Because now it wasn't just about what was leaked. It was about who leaked it, why they leaked it, and what else they might be holding. Meanwhile, his fanbase didn't hesitate. They moved fast. Hardcore supporters flooded comment sections, pushing back against everything, calling the footage fake, edited, taken out of context, anything to protect the image they believed in. And they didn't just argue, they acted. Reporting posts, calling out accounts, trying to slow the spread before it got worse. But the internet doesn't slow down. It accelerates. The more people try to contain something, the more attention it gets. And that's exactly what happened. Reaction videos started appearing almost instantly. Influencers began adding their takes. Smaller blogs turned speculation into headlines. And within hours, what started as a few clips turned into a full-scale digital storm. But then, something happened that changed everything. A single post. A thread. Simple, direct, and way too confident to ignore. It came from an account claiming to have real knowledge of the situation. Not guesses, not theories, insight. And the first line was enough to stop people mid-scroll. This ain't random, this was planned. That was it. No explanation. No evidence attached. Just a statement delivered like fact. And instantly, the entire internet locked in again. Because if that line is true, then none of this is accidental. Not the timing, not the release, not even the reaction. The thread continued, hinting at something bigger. Old connections, unresolved issues, what it described as unfinished business. Still no names, still no proof. But the tone, too certain, too controlled. And that's what made it dangerous. Because people don't need proof when something feels believable. They need confidence. And that thread had it. Now the conversation shift. One more time. Away from the footage itself. And toward the possibility of a setup. Because if this was planned, then someone orchestrated it. Someone waited. Someone chose this exact moment. And suddenly, this wasn't just about NBA YoungBoy anymore. This was about a potential play happening behind the scenes. A coordinated move. Something bigger than one viral clip. And as more people started connecting dots, real or not, the situation became harder to control. Because once the idea of a setup enters the conversation, everything starts looking intentional. Every clip, every repost, every reaction. And now the internet isn't just watching. It's investigating, speculating, building narratives in real time. And the most unsettling part, no one actually knows what's real. But that hasn't slowed anything down. If anything, it's made everything faster. Because uncertainty doesn't kill a story. It fuels it. And right now, this story isn't slowing down. It's expanding. More clips could surface. More accounts could speak. More insiders could step in. And if even one of them brings something concrete, this doesn't just stay a viral moment. It becomes something much bigger. Because what started as silence turned into noise. And that noise is turning into something else entirely. Something unpredictable. Something that doesn't just fade away. And if the pattern holds, then what's coming next won't just add to the story. It might completely change it. Everything was already intense, and then it escalated into something nobody could control. The moment those new clips started surfacing, the entire situation surrounding NBA YoungBoy shifted from speculation into full-blown digital chaos. What began as a single resurfaced video quickly turned into something much bigger, something that felt less like a viral moment and more like an investigation unfolding in real time. Within hours of that mysterious thread gaining traction, the internet was flooded with new material. Not just reposts of the same clip, but extended versions, alternate angles, slowed-down edits, each one claiming to reveal something deeper than the last. And suddenly, this wasn't just about watching anymore. People were analyzing. Frame by frame, sound by sound, detail by detail. You had users pausing clips at exact moments, zooming into backgrounds, enhancing audio to catch whispers, comparing lighting, furniture, even clothing. People were digging through old archives, pulling up forgotten live streams, screenshots from years ago, anything that could connect the dots. And then someone found something. A side-by-side comparison hit the timeline. On one side, the resurfaced footage. On the other, an old, nearly forgotten livestream clip. At first glance, it looked like nothing, just two random moments. But then came the detail. Same background, same setup, same environment. And just like that, everything changed. Because now, for a lot of people, this wasn't maybe real anymore. This felt real, or at least real enough to believe. And once belief takes hold online, it spreads faster than facts ever could. Within minutes, hashtags started trending. Reaction pages jumped in. Influencers who had nothing to do with the situation suddenly had opinions. Some people laughed it off. Others were genuinely confused. And then there were those who went all in, either defending or attacking with full force. But just when it felt like the narrative was settling into one direction, the first major twist hit. A leaked DM conversation. Out of nowhere, screenshots started circulating. No confirmed source, no verified account, just messages that looked real enough to shake things up. According to the alleged conversation, someone close to YoungBoy had warned him about old footage being used against him. Not just randomly either. Strategically. One line stood out more than anything else. They've been sitting on this, waiting till you back on top. That single sentence flipped the entire conversation. Because now this wasn't just about what was in the video, it became about intent, timing, strategy. Was this exposure, or was this an attack? Instantly, the internet split into two aggressive sides. One side doubled down. This proves it's real, he got caught, simple. The other side pushed back just as hard. This is a setup, y'all watching someone try to take him down. And the divide, it got uglier by the second. Then things got even more personal. Out of nowhere, an influencer, someone loosely connected to YoungBoy's past, went live. No announcement, no build-up, just straight into a stream that instantly pulled in thousands. At first, they played it safe, acting hesitant, reading comments, pausing like they didn't want to say too much. But then they dropped a line that froze everything. Y'all really think this just popped up out of nowhere? And just like that, the energy shifted. They didn't name names, they didn't give direct proof, but they started hinting, talking about old relationships, broken trust, fallouts that never got resolved. The kind of vague but specific language that makes people start connecting their own dots. And once the internet starts guessing, it doesn't stop. Names began trending. Old associates, people who hadn't been mentioned at all, were suddenly dragged into the conversation. Accusations started flying. Timelines were being built in real time by people who had never even met the individuals involved. All from one resurfaced clip. Then came another layer. A different account, this one claiming insider knowledge, posted what they called a full timeline, a breakdown of how everything allegedly happened. According to them, the footage wasn't just randomly found. It was recorded during a specific period, stored by a specific person, and recently circulated between multiple individuals before being leaked publicly. No hard proof, but the detail. Too specific to ignore. And that's what made it dangerous. Because people didn't question it, they built on it. Theories turned into narratives. Narratives started feeling like facts. And facts, they became optional. Meanwhile, in the center of all this chaos, silence. No statement, no denial, no acknowledgement. From NBA YoungBoy, nothing. And that silence, it didn't calm anything down. It made everything worse. Because now the conversation wasn't just about the footage anymore. It was about the lack of response. Why he quiet? If it's fake, why not say something? That silence telling me everything. The pressure kept building. The speculation kept growing. And just when it felt like it couldn't get more intense, Another twist. A short audio clip surfaced. Unclear quality, no confirmed source, but the voice, close enough that people started believing it was him. In the clip, a voice could be heard saying something vague, something that many interpreted as a reaction to everything happening. No context, no confirmation. Didn't matter. Because once people think they hear something, they don't unhear it. And just like that, the narrative expanded again. Now it wasn't just about what was seen. It was about what was said, what was implied, what was hidden between the lines. At this point, the internet wasn't even asking if the footage was real anymore. They were asking something else entirely. Who did this? Because whether you believed the clips or not, one thing felt undeniable. This didn't feel random. It felt timed, calculated, targeted, and then came the most unsettling thought of all. What if this wasn't everything? What if this was just the beginning? Because once something like this starts, once footage, leaks, and insider claims begin stacking, it rarely stops at one drop. And that idea, it spread fast. People started asking, what if there's more? More clips, more leaks, more things waiting to come out. And just like that, the situation leveled up again. Because now it wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what might still be coming. And before anyone could even process that possibility, the story crossed into an entirely new space. The celebrity zone. Subtle reactions started appearing, not direct, not obvious, but perfectly timed. Artists posting cryptic tweets, influencers dropping vague statements, stories that didn't mention names but didn't have to. Funny how old things pop up when you're leveling up. Truth don't need defending. And once again, the internet did what it always does. They connected it back. Whether it was intentional or not didn't matter anymore. Because once the audience decides the meaning, that becomes the reality. And now, this isn't just a viral moment. It's a full-blown situation. And it's still unfolding. By this point, the situation had already gone too far to control, and yet somehow, it was still finding new ways to escalate. Because once the audience decides what something means, that meaning becomes the narrative. And the narrative surrounding NBA YoungBoy, it wasn't just growing, it was spiraling at a speed nobody could keep up with. Within hours, the conversation jumped from timelines and comment sections into something more structured. Blogs started picking it up, not the major outlets, at least not yet, but those mid-level platforms that thrive on chaos, speculation, and viral controversy. The kind that move fast, ask questions later, and amplify whatever the internet is already debating. And they were eating this up. Headlines started appearing one after another. Resurfaced footage sparks debate around YoungBoy's past. Fans divided after viral clip raises questions. Was this leak planned? Internet thinks so. Just like that, this wasn't just social media noise anymore. It became a story. Something packaged, reposted, and pushed into wider audiences who hadn't even seen the original clips. People who weren't following closely suddenly found themselves pulled into the conversation, forming opinions based on headlines alone. But just when it felt like things had reached a certain level of intensity, everything flipped again. Because out of nowhere, no one could confirm who, dropped what they claimed were receipts. And not just one or two pieces. A full thread. Screenshots. Audio snippets. Fragments of conversations. All compiled together, presented in a way that felt deliberate, organized, almost strategic. The account behind it claimed they had been sitting on this information for months, watching everything unfold, waiting for the right moment to release it. And according to them, that moment was now. At first, people were skeptical. Of course they were. This is the internet. But the way the information was presented, it pulled people in. It felt detailed enough to believe, but vague enough to question. And that combination, that's what makes something go viral. But here's where it got even more complicated. Because the so-called receipts didn't just focus on the footage, everyone had been debating. They introduced an entirely new angle. According to the thread, this situation wasn't just about embarrassing clips resurfacing. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was personal. The narrative shifted toward a fallout, something happening behind the scenes. The thread suggested that someone who once had access, someone close enough to be trusted, had been cut off, disrespected, left out. And now, they were getting even. No names were dropped. No direct proof was confirmed. But the tone, confident, specific, just believable enough. And that's all it took. Because suddenly, people weren't just analyzing footage anymore. They were investigating relationships, digging into history, asking who had access, who had motive, who had the opportunity to leak something like this. And that's when things got messy. Really messy. Names started getting thrown around. Producers, former friends, old collaborators, people from his early days. Anyone who had ever been in the same room, anyone who might have had access to old content, suddenly became a suspect in the eyes of the internet. And once multiple names enter the conversation, chaos multiplies. Meanwhile, reaction videos were exploding across every platform. YouTubers, streamers, TikTok commentators, everyone had a take. Everyone claimed they saw something others missed. Everyone had a theory. Some were convinced it was all a setup. This too coordinated, this ain't random. Others weren't buying that at all. Y'all overthinking it, this just looks bad, simple. Two completely different realities forming in real time. But then another twist. And this one hit differently. An old interview resurfaced, years old, something most people had forgotten about completely. In it, YoungBoy spoke about trust, about the people around him, about how sometimes the closest ones can turn into the ones watching you the hardest. At the time, it sounded like a general statement, something you'd expect any artist to say. But now, it hit different. People started reposting that clip everywhere. He tried to warn us. He knew something like this could happen. This ain't coincidence. And just like that, the narrative evolved again. Now it wasn't just about footage. It wasn't just about leaks. It became about betrayal. And betrayal stories, they hit harder than anything else online. Because people understand betrayal, they relate to it, they project onto it. But just when it seemed like the internet had settled on that theory, another shock dropped. A second account, completely separate from the first, appeared. No long thread, no detailed breakdown, just one simple message. This ain't the only clip. That was it. No proof, no preview, nothing else. And somehow, that made it even worse. Because now the fear shifted. It wasn't just about what had already leaked. It was about what might still be out there. What else could drop? What else hadn't been seen yet? And that uncertainty, it sent everything into overdrive. Fans started panicking. Defenders got louder, more aggressive. Critics doubled down harder than ever. And the entire situation reached a point where something dangerous happened. Nobody knew what was real anymore. But everyone had an opinion. And right in the middle of all this chaos, silence. From NBA YoungBoy, nothing. No post. No denial. No clarification. And at this stage, that silence felt heavier than anything else in the entire situation. Because now, even a single sentence, one clear statement, could shift everything. But it never came. And then, one final detail started circulating. Small, easy to miss, but powerful. People noticed that some of the accounts that originally posted the footage had suddenly disappeared, gone private, deleted, vanished without explanation. And that raised a new question, one that made everything feel even more serious. Were they backing off? Or were they told to? Because when content starts disappearing like that, it doesn't calm people down. It does the opposite. It makes them suspicious. It makes them think something bigger is happening behind the scenes. Something controlled. Something hidden. And that idea, it spread fast. This deeper than we think. Something going on behind closed doors. This ain't just internet drama anymore. And just like that, the situation crossed another line. Because now it wasn't just about what was visible. It was about what might be invisible. What might be getting removed. What might be getting controlled. And once a story reaches that level, it becomes unpredictable, unstable, impossible to fully understand. Then everything broke. The internet didn't just react anymore. It erupted. Every platform, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, was flooded. Debates, reactions, breakdowns, arguments. It didn't matter where you went, you were going to see it. And the craziest part, nobody could agree on anything. One side was fully defending him, no hesitation. These clips don't prove nothing. This clearly edited. Y'all just want to see him fall. They weren't just defending. They were mobilizing. Mass reporting posts, calling out accounts, accusing entire pages of pushing coordinated narratives designed to damage his reputation. But on the other side, it was just as intense. Y'all can't keep excusing everything. This not normal. Stop acting blind just because you a fan. And just like that, the internet split into two completely different worlds. No middle ground. No neutral space. Just belief versus belief. Narrative versus narrative. And once it gets to that point, there's no easy way back. And just like that, the internet didn't just split, it fractured into two completely separate realities. Once that happens, there's no middle ground left. No neutral space. No shared understanding. Just opposing narratives colliding nonstop. People weren't even having conversations anymore. They were arguing, attacking, clipping each other's words, dragging strangers into debates they never signed up for. Every comment section turned into a battlefield. Friendships online disappeared overnight. Fan communities turned on each other. Entire pages that once shared the same content were now in open conflict. And at the center of all of it, NBA YoungBoy. But then the situation escalated again. Because now it wasn't just fans talking. Larger voices started entering the conversation. Not directly naming him, but the timing was impossible to ignore. A well-known podcast host went live and said something that immediately sent people spiraling. Sometimes when something resurfaces, it's not about what it is, it's about when it shows up. That line didn't stay in the podcast for even a few minutes. It was clipped instantly, reposted instantly, and instantly tied to the ongoing situation. Then came another moment. A popular influencer posted, "I'm not picking sides, but if something keeps following you, maybe it ain't random." Within hours, that post crossed hundreds of thousands of likes. And just like that, it was absorbed into the narrative. Whether these people were actually talking about YoungBoy or not didn't matter anymore. Because once the internet assigns meaning to something, It becomes fact in the eyes of the crowd. And that's where things started getting darker. The conversation wasn't just about the footage anymore. It expanded. It mutated. It started pulling in his entire history. Old controversies resurfaced. Forgotten clips came back. Moments from years ago were suddenly reinterpreted under a completely different lens. Things that once meant nothing were now being treated like evidence. This ain't the first time. Y'all acting like we didn't see this before. He's been moving weird. None of it was new, but in this environment, repetition felt like confirmation. And once multiple narratives start stacking on top of each other, truth stops being the main focus. The story becomes bigger than reality. Meanwhile, fan communities tried to fight back. They pushed back hard. This is a distraction. Focus on the music, not the noise. You're letting the internet trick you. But it wasn't working. Because at this point, the controversy had already become the story. Not something attached to it. The story itself. Then mainstream attention started creeping in. Small media outlets picked it up first. Nothing official. Nothing confirmed. But enough to make it real in a different way. Headlines began circulating. Viral clip sparks debate around YoungBoy's image. Internet divided over resurfaced footage. And that changed everything. Because once something enters media coverage, it stops being just online chatter. It becomes archived, searchable, permanent, and irreversible. But just when things felt like they couldn't get louder, they did. A new audio clip surfaced. Unverified, unconfirmed, but allegedly from someone connected to YoungBoy's circle. The voice sounded tense, emotional, frustrated, almost like panic leaking through every word. You don't even know the H. Alphabet. This wasn't supposed to be out. And instantly, the tone of the entire situation shifted again. Because now it wasn't just about what people had seen. It was about what they believed was still hidden. And that idea is where things become uncontrollable. The question was no longer, is this real? It became, what else is out there? And nobody had an answer. But that didn't stop people from searching. Theories multiplied. Interpretations deepened. Entire threads were built on fragments of speculation. And at some point, the situation stopped being about facts entirely. It became about perception. And perception, once it takes over, doesn't care about accuracy. Only momentum. Then, right when it felt like the internet had already reached its breaking point, something shifted. Whispers started circulating. Not loud. Not official. Just enough to catch attention. A response might be coming. Not a tweet. Not a caption. Something direct. Something final. Something that could either collapse the entire narrative or explode it even further. And that anticipation alone was enough to reset the entire atmosphere. Then it happened. Late at night, when engagement was slowing down, when people thought the moment had peaked, a new clip surfaced. Not from a fan page, not from a gossip account, but from a source believed to be directly connected. And in it, no explanation, no denial, no clarification, just a calm, controlled voice, almost detached. Y'all really believe anything y'all see? That was it. No follow-up, no context, just that one line. And instantly, everything collapsed into chaos again. Interpretation split immediately. That's a denial. That's deflection. He's mocking it. He's avoiding it. Every group took the same moment, and reshaped it into their own version of truth. And just when it felt like that would be the final twist, it escalated again. Because the internet wasn't done yet. Not even close. And just like that, everything changed again. The original thread, the one that allegedly started it all with those receipts, was suddenly gone, deleted. No archive, no backup, no explanation. One moment it was the center of the internet's attention, and the next, it simply didn't exist. And that disappearance hit harder than the leak itself. Because in situations like this, silence doesn't end the story, it deepens it. People immediately split into two camps. One side said it was obvious, the thread was fake, the so-called receipts collapsed under pressure, and the account behind it ran before getting exposed. But the other side wasn't convinced. They believed the opposite, that the information went too far, hit too close, and someone with influence forced it offline before it could spread further. No one could prove anything, but that uncertainty became fuel. And once again, the narrative shifted. Now it wasn't just about NBA YoungBoy. It wasn't even just about the footage anymore. It was about control, who had it, who lost it, and who was trying to erase it. That's when the speculation escalated. People started asking why it disappeared right after going viral. Why now, after millions had already seen it? Was it damage control, legal pressure, or just another layer of internet chaos collapsing under its own weight? Every answer created a new question. And in the middle of that confusion, new whispers started circulating. Claims of legal teams getting involved, talk of accounts being monitored, even rumors that more material existed, clips not yet released, conversations not yet exposed, information still sitting in the dark, waiting. That idea alone changed everything. Because if even half of it was real, then what the internet had seen so far wasn't the full story. It was just the opening chapter. Meanwhile, the silence from NBA YoungBoy only made things heavier. No statements, no posts, no clarification. And in the absence of response, people began filling the gaps themselves. Some said the silence was strategy, a refusal to feed the chaos. Others saw it as confirmation, arguing that in the world of viral controversy, not speaking is still a statement. And that's where things became dangerous. Because once interpretation replaces fact, truth stops being shared, it gets invented. Old clips resurfaced, past interviews were reanalyzed, random moments from years ago were reuploaded and reframed as evidence. Every detail, no matter how small, was dragged into the growing narrative. And still, no confirmation ever came. But the impact was already done. At this point, it wasn't about proving what was real anymore. It was about belief. Millions of people had already locked into their version of the story, and none of them were the same. Then came the final wave, the rumor that a direct response might be coming. Not vague, not symbolic, but clear. Something that could either shut everything down instantly or ignite it beyond control. And that's where the tension peaked. Because everyone knew one thing for sure. Once that kind of response drops, there's no taking it back. And yet nothing arrived. Only more silence. Only more speculation. And more accounts quietly deleting posts, disappearing from timelines like they were never part of the conversation at all. Now the question isn't what happened. It's who is shaping what people are allowed to see. And whether this was ever just a viral moment, or the first visible crack in something much bigger still unfolding behind the scenes. Because one thing is certain, this story didn't end. It only learned how to move in silence.